When it comes to League start, your goal is always to make your character as powerful as possible, as quickly as possible. And for Spark Mage, that means getting to the point where your character is blanketing the screen with insane amounts of projectiles that fly at light speed across the map. When this character does get geared, we have 4 curses on autocast, a ton of recovery and avoidance, and cast speed for smooth gameplay, as well as a huge max hit for those boss swings that typically put you in the ground. But Leagues have to start somewhere, and typically that means on the beach, with no gear, no currency, and not a single cent to your name. Now, Path of Exile is a super complicated game with a lot of nuance and almost infinite knowledge to gain, so you're going to need a guide that's going to take you step by step and help you cut through all of the noise and tell you exactly what you need to do to get back to blasting maps and having fun. So every build has to start somewhere, and this one is going to be starting with Fireball, Ignite, Prolif. Now, you can use Rolling Magma if you prefer. Both of these skills are viable. Rolling Magma is technically stronger, but Fireball is a little bit more consistent. This build will carry us through the initial acts, giving us a very satisfying 1 or 2 cast clear and allowing you to focus on moving to the next zone while the Ignite spreads to all of your enemies. Once we get to Act 3, we're going to gain access to our main spell for quite some time, which is going to be Firestorm. This skill has insane damage effectiveness and will shred through monsters and bosses alike. This skill will carry us easily until the end of the campaign, and you can pretty much fire and forget on most enemies, especially after you get to Act 4 and obtain the Unleash gem. This gem causes you to gather up charges and cast 3 of them at the same time. Now, once we do hit the end of the campaign and have saved Rayclass from Kitava, it's time to head into the dream world and save the universe. But before that, we have to go grab our new skill that'll get us through the early endgame while we gather gear and currency to swap to Spark, and that's going to be Ball Lightning of Orbiting. You can obtain this gem in 2 separate ways. You can either buy it on asynchronous trade, which is probably the easiest method, or whenever you do get access to Merciless Lab, before you kill Kitava, you can bring a couple Ball Lightning gems with you and run Lab a couple of times until you get a Ball Lightning of Orbiting. There is a new Divine Font modifier that guarantees you a certain gem of the same type, and you can choose which one you like. Now, Ball Lightning of Orbiting is an extremely powerful skill that gives you pretty insane clear and single target, but this is only in open map layouts. I heavily suggest that as you're using the new Atlas, you focus mainly on open layouts. This skill will lose all of its damage when it hits a wall, as the projectile just simply disappears. Now, this build will easily carry you through all of the early mapping content and prep you to swap into the full Spark Mage build. That's the one that you saw towards the beginning of the video. If you are just here for the written guide, make sure to like the video and comment down below on what you plan to do with the new Atlas, as view time is massive for YouTube, so if you plan to just jump off, engagement with the video can help support me and my channel and get my videos in front of more people, which gives me the resources to make better videos like this for all of you going forward. Over on Mobalytics, which you can find linked down in the description, there is going to be a massive guide that I have written for this build. I personally am going to be league starting this myself, and what I did is I did a full SSF run, going piece by piece, step by step, trying to figure out what the best way to go about this is, and I have done a ton of different steps here. So you are going to have handheld, step-by-step, little tiny piecemeal every single bit of the way. I have extensive notes for pretty much every single section that you're going to see here. This includes all of the skill trees, all of the items that my character used, all my links, everything that you could ever need is going to be included in this guide. And of course, there's a POB for people who just want to use Path of Building. But if you want the written guide, it is mainly here on Mobalytics. So I do want to talk briefly about some of the basics of the final build. This is the Spark version of the build. So the whole idea here, and the reason why you would go Spark in general, is because in tight corridor maps, things where there's just not a lot of room, you can see how frequently these sparks overlap. Now in the POB, you might see that it's like 3.5 million DPS or something like that. That is if the spark hits one time. So if it's hitting the maximum times is like 20 or 30 million DPS, something like that. But the idea is that when you're in these close corridors like this and you use Spark, it fills up the entire zone. As compared to if you're out in the open like this, significantly fewer are going to overlap. Now, Toxic Sewers is being removed from the pool, but there's a bunch of other maps that are actually quite good as well. One of those is going to be Crater, which has some pretty close corridors as well. You'll get more updates from me over time as we go into the league, because I'm league starting this myself, so you'll get all of that info. But the whole idea here is that when you are in these like tight corridors like this, do you see how much overlap is here? Now, this is a white map with absolutely nothing on it, so don't expect anything crazy. But the idea is just that you can get some insane overlap in these kinds of maps. So this isn't a build that you're going to be farming anything and everything with. This is a specific build that you'll be focused on farming very tight corridor maps and mechanics where you don't really have to do a lot of moving or, you know, all that kind of stuff. So think about mechanics like Ultimatum, ones where you can just stand still in a little room and just blanket it with projectiles and wait for the loot to fall on the floor in front of you. One other thing to talk about is going to be our Frostblink of Wintry Blast. Now, there is an interesting mechanic here with the way that movement works with this skill. So I have Spell Echo linked in here, and most of the time when you're spell echoing, that means that it's going to cast twice. However, there is this little mechanic that I figured out with this skill where if you're holding left click and moving and you click the button that has Spell Echo on it, it does cancel it automatically. So the idea is that you can gain this 53% more cast speed. As you can see, it's significantly faster with the Spell Echo in there. However, you don't get that double cast thing that happens like that, right? Whereas if I'm not holding left click, it will cast twice. If I am holding left click, it will only cast once, and you can move significantly faster through maps. That said, if you're going to fight a boss where you want some more precision in where your character is moving, I definitely would swap it out with like Arcane Surge or something like that, because then, you know, you'll get a little bit more control over what you're doing. But for general map clear, like to give you an idea, we can go back in this Toxic Sewers, and I can go ahead and just jump around a little bit here. So in very simple maps, I'm just going to turn items off. You can actually like somewhat clear just with this ability. Like you're not going to be able to kill rares or anything like that, but you can move around quite quickly. You don't have to worry about that spell echo effect that can happen there. And I mean, this build is pretty zoomy if you actually put the links together for the Archmage setup. Now, lastly, a quick thought about uber bossing. This is a farming build, and it's not something that you're really meant to be doing like uber bosses and such with. However, I know that some people will want to do some uber bossing, so I did go ahead and make a setup where you are able to do uber bosses relatively easily. So the idea is we're going to be using a separate Widow Hail because mine has faster projectiles corrupted into it, and we do not want that for this. We're going to be using Ball Lightning of Orbiting as well as Slower Proj. So the idea is you just swap your gems in here. You would swap around just a couple points on the tree. There is a link down below that'll show you everything that you need to know about that. The idea behind Ball Lightning of Orbiting is that you do not want faster projectiles, right? So typically Rearguard, the thing that is making this build function properly, has 30% increased projectile speed, which is then increased by 2.5 times, meaning that if I put this on, the projectile speed is insane, which is really, really bad for this, because you don't want the projectiles to go fast. You want them to go slow and stay near you. However, it just so happens that Foulborn Rearguard takes off exactly that modifier that we don't want. So very easy to just swap into this, lose all of that projectile speed, and then you've got the nice slow Ball Lightning of Orbiting again, which should be relatively comfortable for bossing. The other things that you're going to want to do is you'll want to swap out to some Eye to Eye and Repeater gems instead of the ones that give you projectile speed, and then you will also be moving some points out of these duration nodes here because you're not going to need it for Ball Lightning of Orbiting. Besides that, pretty much nothing else changes about the build. It's actually a really simple swap, so if you do decide that you want to do some uber bossing or something later, albeit it's not going to be a huge amount of DPS, but it is quite tanky and you can at least get some kills done if you need them. Reminder that I am going to be playing this build and there will be a live updates version of the Mobalytics guide down below. You can find it linked in the main Mobalytics guide. It'll be, you know, my character as I progress through the days of the league start. So if you're wanting to see exactly what I'm doing, any new updates or any cool stuff that I'm working on, you can always check that out. But remember, boys, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest videos, and stay safe out there in Raid Class. And I'll see you guys in the next video.